All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining during your lunch hour. We have the wonderful Chef Elliot here today to do the veggie stir-fry demo. I'm going to swap over. And yes, I want to say before we get started that this session is going to be recorded, and we'll post this onto the Whole You YouTube channel. And yes, if you have any questions, please, throughout the presentation, throw them in the chat. Use the Q&A function, as always. I'll be able to prompt the questions as well and feed them over to Chef Elliot. But if you would like to leave any feedback, either to the Whole You email or through after this session today, please do if you guys want to see, or if everybody wants to see any more content like this in the future. But without further ado, Chef Elliot, I'm going to hand it off to you.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Chef Eliot Norris. I am the Assistant Campus Executive Chef here at UW. Pleasure to have you here as we get to talk about vegetables and what to do with them, and specifically stir frying. What part of the Whole You is certainly focused on making sure that we are at least promoting good, healthy eating, and vegetables are obviously a big part of that. A lot of people who are much further educated and better to speak about the specific health benefits of vegetables, I'm sure, on this campus. But for my part, everyone can enjoy vegetables more. A lot of Americans and people in general don't get the required amount of vegetables, which is about 2.5 cups of vegetables. If you actually think about that, that's a good amount of vegetables. And sometimes people are pretty averse to vegetables, or they have only a specific type of vegetables that they like. And so hopefully this session about stir frying will give you that extra little bit of, I guess, tool in your toolbox to help with either you or your family kind of trick them into eating more vegetables. Because like I said, vegetables are very good. They have so many vitamins and minerals that you need, phosphorus, potassium, zinc. Green leafy vegetables have a lot of iron and other great things that can help reduce certain diseases and help with general living. And please talk to your doctor, don't just take it from me. But in general, we want to make sure that everyone is getting those vegetables, and a stir fry is a really good way. And it's actually a pretty simple way to make sure that you're getting those vegetables and that you can kind of increase the variety of the vegetables that you are currently eating. And so that is what we are going to do here today. Quick bit of history. Stir fry, the technique, sort of came about from what we can tell about 1,500 years ago in the area of China. Since that has sort of grown and expanded throughout its lifetime, there's not a specific place that I at least know of. It has obviously then sort of spread out into much of Asia and to the world since then. Stir fry as a technique into many different food cultures around the world. And so it is a widely used technique, but can also be, because it is so widely used, there are so many different variations and different styles of stir fry, and we're going to do a little bit of that today. Couple of things also, the equipment that we are using, a wok is sort of the traditional and honestly the best way to do a stir fry, from its shape and the amount of heat dispersion that it allows you for a stir fry. It is really the best thing to do. But if you were like most of us, and me, I only recently got a wok, I would say about a year ago, and I've been doing this for a very long time. A lot of people don't have woks in their house. I do highly recommend it. If you are going to add stir fry to your sort of rotation of dinner meals, it is a really good tool to use and gives you that really great flavor and consistency that really only a wok can. But for those of us who don't have a wok, and I think someone asked me a question the other day, even the flat bottom woks, for those who have electric ovens as opposed to gas ovens, those are still even a little bit better than our nonstick pan. But for today, we're using nonstick pan. We're actually using a very big nonstick pan because it was either this one probably not going to give us the right surface area that we want. So we're going to be using a nonstick pan today for our stir fry. A lot of this, like I said, stir fry is going to be more of a technique, not necessarily a specific set of ingredients, although there are obviously some carryovers and some things that you want to do each time. But you can kind of use the stir fry method for almost all vegetables. You can mix and match them however you want. It's actually really great, this technique and this style, to take all of those things that you have in your fridge that I only have half a zucchini, or here's this 1 carrot. things like that. Those are really good to cut and prepare, and you can combine them into a really delicious stir fry. And it's a great way to utilize your entire fridge just in case there's that, one stalk of celery that's been there for a couple of days because you made, tuna salad or something like that you don't have a use for. A stir fry is a really great way to sort of utilize all of those vegetables that you have so that A, from a price point, you're not going out to buying a whole lot of things, but B, you're also not throwing things away because I know none of us like doing that. We all like to utilize all the things that we buy for multiple reasons, for, planet, for wallets, for all of the things. My man Sebastian is trying to keep me on track here, so if I'm looking over, he's usually giving me some signal of wrap it up or something of like that. But, so we will get sort of right to it. Where the thing with stir fry, it is all about your upfront prep because the actual cooking is actually a pretty short amount of time, and we'll be adding the ingredients and stir fry things actually pretty quickly. So you want to make sure that you have all of your ingredients or your mise en place, if you want to use the technical term, in place before you actually, sort of turn on your pan and start cooking. Because the stir fry, you want those vegetables to be cooked but still have a bit of crunch to them. You're going to add your vegetables in sort of a different order depending upon how long they take to cook. And if you're, adding something and then going to chop something else, something is either probably going to burn because you've left it in there for too long, or you're going to turn off the stove or turn off the pan, and then it'll get sort of soggy and it won't have the good crunch by the time you add the things over. So it's always best to make sure that you have all of your vegetables cut and prepared how you want them to go right into your stir fry before you actually start. And so today, if we have time, we're gonna do two. But so our first one is gonna be ginger, bell pepper, snap pea. I have some baby corn right here. Did we get the sign of our lovely vegetable bounty that we have right there? We have snap peas right here, mushrooms, celery. I have onions and bell peppers, scallions or green onions, broccoli, baby corn, carrots, and a yellow onion. And today, out of that group, we're going to use a little bit of ginger that I have already chopped up. We're going to cut up a bell pepper, about half of a bell pepper. I would say a handful. I would say 10 to 15 snap peas we're going to use. Baby corn, which I have canned baby corn. Hopefully you have canned baby corn too. I like baby corn. Carrots, which we're going to peel and cut up. I'm going to use a red onion. You can use red onion or white onion. For this one, I'm just kind of preferring to use the red onion. And we're going to cut up some scallions, kind of garnish at the end, and I have a little bit of sesame seeds at the end as well. One of the key points for a stir fry, the technique, is also finishing with a sauce. Sauce can mean many different things. There are so many different varieties and styles of sauce depending on your cuisine, the region of that cuisine, everything like that. They can be simple, they can be complicated, they can be sticky and sweet, they can be a little bit sour, they can be rather simple. And so for this sauce, at least for this first run, as I have lost my sticker that had the sauce ingredients on it, it is right here. We have 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, not tamari, not gluten-free soy sauce, regular soy sauce, and not the low sodium, so full sodium soy sauce. You can use, obviously, light soy sauce or tamari if you would like. I have a tablespoon of hoisin, a tablespoon of sriracha, which is not as spicy as it sounds, a teaspoon of sugar, and a teaspoon of sesame oil. This will thicken up a little bit when you put it into the pan, but it's not going to be a sort of gravy. It's more going to be sort of a gloss, if that makes sense, with this stir-fry dish, because for the most part, we're here to highlight the vegetables. And that sauce just gives it that extra little bit of flavor profile, or that little bit of umami, since we're not using any mushrooms or anything like that, or a little bit of zing if you wanted it to. But we really are here to highlight the vegetables, and the sauce is really meant to be sort of an addition, not a, hey, I've dunked something in this giant amount of gravy. Like I said, sauces can be simple. That sauce, really simple to throw together and just whisk up. There are other cornstarch sauces that have cornstarch in it that will get really thick. Those are good. I usually prefer those if you're going to do meat, like if you're going to make a full stir fry, chicken stir fry, tofu stir fry, or something like that. That's kind of the sauce that I usually like because it gives you a little bit extra to it. But that is the sauce that we are going to use today for at least this one, and we'll go into other ones if we have time. So I'm going to start cutting up our bell pepper. We're only going to use about half of this bell pepper. So there are multiple different ways to cut up a bell pepper. I usually do this one. It's just easier for me. Like there, you don't need this anymore. And we really don't put that back. We really probably just need that much. So we'll pop it down right here. I always use the skin side on the bottom, especially with bell peppers. If you have a sharp knife, you usually don't have to worry about it. But if your knife is dull, you might be pressing a lot more and worry about cutting it yourself. So we'll just get this cut up. I usually do, or at least my pinky width for the peppers on the stir fry. It is going to be a quick cooking process, but I still want that little bit of a bite to it. Yes, sir. I beg your pardon? Ingredients of the sauce. Ingredients of the sauce again? Sure. There is 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, 1 tablespoon of hoisin sauce, 1 tablespoon of sriracha, 1 teaspoon of just sugar. We used beet sugar because we use beet sugar on campus, but granulated sugar is just fine. And then 1 teaspoon of sesame oil. That is going to be our sauce ingredients. Perfect. Even better. All right, red peppers, snap peas. Red peppers are going to be right here. Snap peas, for the most part, you don't have to do too much with snap peas. If you have sugar snaps, they usually don't need to be peeled or picked by any means. Depending on what you look like, you can always take the ends, sort of snap them off and peel them back. And if there's any string that comes with them, that's always good to get out. It's not like you can't eat it. It'll just be sort of chewy and like, oh, there's a snap pea string. So we'll get that right here. And I like to leave these whole. You can cut these in half or in thirds, depending upon the size and what you're doing with your stir fry, but I usually like to leave them whole. Here. Go here. I'll do a little more. I like snap peas. So also, all of the produce has been washed. Be sure to wash your produce, even if it's just cold water in the sink. And there we go. Do it right there. Snap peas, baby corn, we'll just sort of separate out. I like to keep everything separate because I have small amounts of OCD, but also it really does help when it gets time to cook that you are being able to add something immediately like you want to add, as opposed to trying to make sure you're doing half of something or only doing like a half of a container of something like that. So if you have the ability, I always like to keep things separate just for my own sort of state of mind. The carrot, you can, depending on where you buy your carrots, if you have a garden, it's not a very good garden year for me, but I do have a garden. I will just sort of wash and wipe down the carrots and leave the skin on, but these are commercial carrots, and even though they're washed, I usually like to take the skin off anyway. So like that. Rearranging. Perfect. For carrots, you can use carrots in multiple different aspects or different styles in a stir fry. You can do matchstick. You can do oblique cut, which is sort of a chunkier cut. We're going to do sort of thin coins. You do have to worry about if you have a thick vegetable, say, since we're not going to use this today, but just in case if you were going to use like this broccoli, this is a big floretta broccoli. I would consider blanching this before adding it to your stir fry, which is basically going to be dunking it in hot water, taking it out and shocking it in ice water. So you're basically sort of par cooking it because when you get into the stir fry, it's only going to be in the pan for so long. And vegetables like this that take a little bit longer to cook, you want to make sure that it sort of finishes with everybody else. And sometimes if you don't blanch your broccoli and it's too big, like, if you have a broccoli florette that big, you don't have to, oh, sorry, there we go, that big, you don't have to worry about blanching it. But if it's something like this, and it really depends on taste. Like if you like a tiny little broccoli, this is right for you. But if you like a big broccoli too in your stir fry, that's totally fine. But I would definitely consider blanching this. That way it is all nice and tender and still has a little bit of crisp in there. And you're not having to like overcook everything just to get your broccoli panned up. All right, so we'll move these guys out of the way. So our coins for our carrots, we are just going to do a little bit of a bias cut. Always want to make sure you have a sharp knife, everyone. Sharp knives are the thing that will be most beneficial to you. Dull knives, you are, I think, 7 times more likely to cut yourself using a dull knife, just because you either A, think that, you know, you can cut something like this or just do it with your hand. It's a dull knife, don't worry about it, and you'll put that extra pressure, and that extra pressure will go right into your hand. Or you'll try to do something like this and try to get crazy with it, and then you're going to cut yourself as well. So always make sure you have a sharp knife. And we're just doing coins just like this. There we go. Scraps right here. That's going to be our carrots. Wipe it down here. Perfect. Carrots, red onion. I already have a peeled red onion. I'm only going to use about half of this. So for the most part, depending on the stir fry, I think for today, because you can, like I said, a lot of stir fry can be really fun because you can sort of mix and match vegetables and styles and trims and cuts and all of these sort of things. I was originally going to julienne this, but I think I saw something the other day and someone just put this into quarters, or not quite going to do quarters. I'm going to sort of just cut it in half, and then we'll do big chunks like that. I do like some onion, and so for me, big chunk of onion is always going to be good. And then our last little bit is going to be our scallion. This is going to be sort of something we're going to put right at the very end, even after our sauce. But I will just cut this up right quick. And this will be more of a fun garnish, kind of the same. We're going to use some sesame seeds as well. Sesame seeds are also going to go right at the end with the green onions as we get these sort of chopped up. There we go. Perfect. I will actually just leave these right there at the edge. All right. So now it's basically time to start stir fry. Here's the fun part. So you want to make sure you have your skillet on. I'm going to do about medium high. I do want to let this sort of get hot. This is going to be a hot the whole time sort of cooking. And so it will be certainly very quick, but you also want to make sure that it's really hot because all of these vegetables, when you add them, will cool down your pan. And you want to make sure you're keeping that pan really nice and hot. The order of operations is kind of important for stir fry. You always want to make sure that you are doing ingredients in highest cooking time down, basically. So like our carrots and our onions are going to be some of the longest cooking times. We're going to add them probably around the same time. The peppers and the snap peas and the baby corn will probably go in all at the same time at the next phase once that's cooked, because the baby corn's already cooked. You're just looking for some heat and some color. The peppers don't take long to cook at all. And also the snap peas, I mean, you can eat snap peas just raw if you want them to. They're delicious. And so the amount of, you don't want too much heat because they do get sort of mushy, and you really want some color and some crispness to it. So those are going to go that way. Aromatics is what I would consider to be your ginger, if you're using garlic, if you're using sort of chilies or whole spices, depending on the cuisine that you're going to want to do. That is going to be some of the first things that you add right after the oil, because you want that to sort of flavor the entire dish. Also keeping in mind that you don't need a lot, especially because we are here to, sort of highlight the vegetables. But if we get through this one, I might do some garlic stir-fried celery. Then we might do a little bit more garlic because it's just the celery, and we really want to make sure that we're kind of on brand with garlic because I do love garlic. We do have our pan heating up here. It's just going to take a couple of seconds. We check my to-do notes here. How are we doing on time? 20 minutes. I think we'll get 2 stir fries done. This will be good. When we get to the cooking, it is going to be, like I said, very fast. We're going to add a small amount of oil, turn our pan off for a second, and then just swirl the oil around so it has a nice even base. We're going to put it back on the stove, turn it back up to medium high, and then we're going to start adding those aromatics. It's going to be a quick saute. Then we're going to add our carrots and our onions, also giving those about a minute or two as we kind of keep constantly moving and constantly going, making sure that heat is both cooking and we're also moving it so that we have some good movement, and it's also steaming and frying all at the same time. It's multi-purpose. We'll cook those for 2 minutes or so, and then it'll be our other vegetables, our snap peas, our peppers, and our corn. And then we will finish right at our sauce. The sauce you always want to do almost last, minus any sort of garnish that we might have. The usual ingredients in a sauce have some sort of, usually a soy or a salty, sticky sweet, which is great, but it also will immediately cling and evaporate into your pan. And so the sauce is the last thing you want to put it in there. It's going to bubble for just a second, and then you're done. You don't want to add the sauce too soon, because by the time, if you're still waiting on vegetables to cook, the sauce will get sort of burnt. It'll have that extra charred tail. You'll have some burnt vegetables. It'll be a whole sort of thing. So the sauce, no matter what that sauce is, I mean, you can use store-bought teriyaki sauce if you want to. Should go right at the end, just so you're sort of heating it, maybe reducing it just for a second, depending on what's in it, and then you are done cooking. All right, so I think we are pretty hot here. I know I'm sweating a little bit. So, question before we get started. Not at this level. So I'm just starting to smoke just a little bit. That means that I'm usually done. So just a little bit of heat. That amount, if you're doing it that way, will not usually damage the nonstick pan, depending upon the pan. If you were to let this on high heat for 30 minutes and just let it rip and not putting it in it, you'd probably see some sort of damage. A lot of the new, like, hex-clad and also are seemingly are indestructible. I think I have to put it on my Christmas list. It's usually the washing and the utensils that you're using will destroy a nonstick pan. Nonstick pans in general should not go into your dishwasher unless it specifically says like top rack dishwasher safe. I usually always just hand wash my nonstick pan, being as they are nonstick. 90% of the time, I don't have a whole lot of trouble just washing it by hand right quick and letting it air dry. Also, with these, since these are not the brand spanking new, I can do whatever I want to with them. We're going to be using a rubber spatula. Or wooden spoon also helps. You want to avoid metal. Basically, the Teflon on here will come up when you start scratching metal against it. So the things that I have found the most that have really damaged pans are going to be the washing that you are doing and the type of washing that you're doing and the utensils that you're using in those pans. Yeah. All right, so I just turned that off a second ago, so I'll just add a little bit of oil. This is probably about a little bit, just like a teaspoon of oil. I'm just really just moving this around just so that the oil is kind of all over the place. We don't have to worry about trying to do this once we're really ready to cook. It kind of gets everywhere. It's a non-stick, so it might look like it is missing some gaps, but we're getting some nice coating there. I'm going to turn this back on. We're going to go right back up to medium high. Do that. There we go. Woo. As I dab my brow. Excellent. And like I said, we're going to add, so there's a teaspoon in here already. Here, let me turn like that. There's a teaspoon in here already. I have about a tablespoon extra. Depending on the amount of vegetables, this amount of vegetables I would imagine is going to be, I would say right around 2.5 cups as I try to get out of the way. This is probably going to be a two-person side vegetable amount. You can always stretch that out if you a little bit want to. You do want to try to avoid crowding the pan because the searing, the hot, the movement is really sort of defines that stir fry. And if you have a full pan of vegetables, it's really kind of hard to get that caramelization, and you'll end up sort of steaming your vegetables, which is great if you want steamed vegetables. But for a stir fry, you really want to try to avoid that. And so you want to make sure that you are not crowding your pan. All right, so we are ready. We're going to add our oil back in, keeping it moving, keeping it going. We are going to add our ginger, like so. Whew. A lot. Moving it around. I'm going to add my carrots and my onions, just like so. And so with those aromatics, or probably a little bit too hot, hence the flashing. But when you add your aromatics, you're really not looking to brown the vegetable or the garlic or the ginger. You're really just looking to sort of season and flavor the oil. And then you can really start adding your vegetables pretty immediately because you don't really want that much color to them. Turn this up since I have a humongous pan. You always want to kind of keep it moving. Not too much. This is a big pan, so it's even hard for me to sort of saute and move. So if you don't have the arm strength or the space, or you're just a little bit uncomfortable, you can always just sit here and just sort of move it around. You see some nice color on our vegetables. Want to make sure that they are cooking, but also moving around and things like that. And the woks are great because you have those high sides like that. And so you really have like a hot centered zone in the center, and you can stir it and move it around so it kind of leaves that hot zone. That gives you a little bit of that steam that helps really with what is happening. There we go. All right, next we are going to go our peppers, our snap peas, and our baby carrots. Give that. Yes, very colorful. That's kind of the fun part too. It really gives you a chance to cook them in a way that it really enhances that color, because stir fry really keeps all those moistures and all those sort of fun and vitamins and minerals inside. A lot of the vitamins and minerals, like vitamin B and vitamin C, I believe, they're water soluble. And so they will almost immediately, I'm actually going to turn this a little carried away. I think I had that up on high. They're water soluble, so if you boil them as opposed to blanch them, if you just let them cook in some water and your water will turn green if you're doing broccoli or something like that, that's all those like vitamins and minerals sort of leaching out of the vegetable and into the water. And that really kind of defeats the purpose. Not really, but it lessens the purpose of making yourself some of those nice, great vegetables. So right now we're just keeping things moving. Want to make sure that they're still you can see all the steam and everything coming like that. All of that oil, you might have been thinking to yourself like a tablespoon and a teaspoon of oil might have been a lot, but all of that oil has sort of been absorbed and used in our stir fry already, and there's not a lot of extra oil standing around. Woo! Test one out here. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay. Just because I got this a little bit hot earlier, I'm going to turn this off. If you're going at a nice medium high, maybe turn it down to medium when you get to sauce time. This sauce will sort of immediately start to bubble and start to thicken, and you'll be done pretty quickly. So we will just go in like that. Yep. And see how it's already like bubbled and thickened and everything like that. that sauces almost immediately. Woo! Excuse me. Gotten ready, and so that is basically done. This is a very quick cooking process, so it is all about that upfront prep. I'm going to add some of our scallions right here and a pinch of our sesame seeds. We're going to give this a quick stir, and then we're done. And the thing about a stir fry is you almost want to make it not the last thing that you're going to do, but pretty close, because stir fries are really meant to be hot, and you don't want those steamed vegetables. You want that nice, tender, hot vegetable with a little bit of that crunch. So the longer you let it sort of sit and do like that, not necessarily the worse it's going to be, but it kind of takes away from that stir fry. So I do have a little bit of rice here. I had some of our lovely people here at Local Point put together for me. And so we can just go right down here. Some rice. And then a spoon. Right there. So everything is super hot, super steamy. Most of these vegetables, if as soon as you add that sauce, you might say like, oh man, I wish that that carrot could use like 30 more seconds. By the time you add that sauce, that's adding extra liquid. That's going to create more steam, and that's really going to help finish those vegetables pretty quickly. So if you think you're right on the edge and you're worried about, oh, my carrots might not be 100% the way I want them, by the time you add that sauce and you finish tossing it around, it will be right where you want it to be. And so something like this, just great side. You could put a nice piece of grilled salmon here, some chicken. Depending on the sauce flavoring of your stir fry, you can make it a marinated vegetable or a marinated, piece of meat, and we'll go from there. This looks delicious. I think I see Sebastian's clicking his chops here. And so since I'm assuming we're only at like the 30-minute mark, right? 35. I think we have time to do another stir fry. I think we're gonna try and push it here. All right. So this one's gonna be actually really simple, and that actually kind of highlights. I'm gonna use a very small pan for this one, just because we are only doing one vegetable, and that is gonna be celery. And kind of like I said earlier, the varieties and the different cuisines have so many different uses of stir fry. You can just stir fry a single sort of vegetable. It doesn't have to be the vegetable mix that we just made, even though that is delicious. You can do a single vegetable, some gailan or bok choy. Celery is one of the things that I like to do, and mostly because it gives you something to do with celery, because celery by itself can be kind of, I don't know, lame. I don't want to be rude to celery. I love celery, but a lot of people don't have a lot of use out of it outside of the 3 or 4 recipes that they have, sort of come up with or have. And so a stir fry is a great way to continue to use those vegetables in your pantry, and maybe using something that you didn't have a use for. If you have some celery that you're using, 2 or 3 stalks of, and now all of a sudden you still have half a head of celery that you don't have any idea what you're going to use with, this will be a great way to do it. Clean up my area just a little bit here. We will go from there. All right. So for this one, we are just going to chop up sort of our celery, take the stems and the ends off. Sure.
Someone asked, do you have any recommendations for soy sauce alternative? Anything that just doesn't use soy?
Anything that doesn't use soy, as in, liquid aminos is very good. You got to be careful with that. Not to say that it is not a good substitute, but liquid aminos you can get carried away with quickly. A lot goes a long way, or a little bit, goes a long way. For the most part, There are things that you can just do with like cornstarch, water, and sugar that really just give you a nice sort of sweet glaze that you don't have to worry about having any of the soy, if that's an allergen or if it's just a preference of not wanting that soy. You don't really have to use soy in any of these stir fries. It is, I would say, a more traditional. It's more, I guess, a classic rendition of a soy sauce. But yeah, anything from hoisin sauce, oyster sauce. You can just use sweet chili sauce, the mild sweet, the Mayploy sweet chili sauce. You don't even have to make it you can just sort of jug that into the soy sauce or into your stir fry at the end. The sauce can really be a fun way, and it doesn't necessarily need to have soil. Didn't need to have soil in it either. So we're gonna do kind of the same thing with the carrot. We're gonna do a pretty bias cut celery here. Depending on your preference, I've known people to peel their celery before cutting it up, just to get rid of those extra strings on top. They usually have not really bothered me personally, but I know people can have feelings about them. So you would always just want to just take that top sort of layer right off if you have strong feelings about what your celery should taste like. You can see all of the strings and things like that in there. Like I said, it never particularly bothers me, so that's why I usually don't do it. But I have certainly worked in places where that was the standard. Go here, and we might as well just do all of it. I am not intentionally, but I am not going, I would say, as proper cutting demonstration speed. So I apologize. We can always try and do one more. We can do more of these if there is a cutting demo need. We can certainly go from there. But for time, I want to make sure that we're getting everything cut just right. All right, so we're going to go back to our pan. Get that up to medium, high here. This time around, I'm going to use garlic as my aromatic. It's going to be the same thing. We're going to add that little bit of oil, swirl it around, a little bit more oil, garlic, and then our celery. For the sauce, for this one, is going to be a little interesting. It's definitely going to be more of a glaze, but it also has cornstarch in it, which is why it looks like a latte, basically, at the moment. But there is 4 ounces of water, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, 1 tablespoon of soy, 1 tablespoon of oyster sauce, and 1 teaspoon of sesame oil is going to be in here. And I'm not going to use, because there's only such a small amount of these vegetables, I'm not going to use all of this, but I am just kind of stirring it up. If you do make a cornstarch-based sauce, you always want to make sure you stir it up right before you use it, because that cornstarch can settle, and you'll just have a thick, like, the bottom level of this will just be the white cornstarch, and the cornstarch is what helps thickens. So we'll want to make sure that we are doing that. Sure. Yep. 4 ounces of water, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, 1 tablespoon of oyster sauce, and then 1 teaspoon of sesame oil. You do want to watch out with all of these. Soy sauce, sesame oil, oyster sauce, they're all pretty salty. And so that's why we're not adding more salt to this. Usually all of these ingredients in the sauce will take care of your sort of salt and pepper needs. You can always, obviously always taste your food. You can always add more what you would prefer, but don't go too heavy on the salt because there's enough of it already. All right, so pan, nice and hot. Since I did this, let's make sure I got my stove here. Gonna do just a smidgen of oil on the bottom and let that sort of roll around just to make sure that we are ready to go. Get that back up. I'll add a little bit more. Make sure we're going just like that. Grab a spoon right here, and I'm just going to add a little bit of, probably about a teaspoon and a half of garlic. I love garlic, so by all means, you can do less garlic if you would like. Sure. So right before we start to brown, we're going to go right in. Normally, you wouldn't want a pan this small because, like I said, there was a crowding issue. But we have a small pan, big pan. We don't have a medium pan here. So stirring it around, keeping it going. With this one, the small pan, you can be a lot more active with it. It is going to be a little bit more like a saute than a stir fry since we don't really have a wok. But really, the point is you want to make sure that you're sort of moving the ingredients around. You want to make sure that nothing is standing for too long. It is supposed to be really quick and really hot and really tasty and all of those things. Make sure we keep on going just like this. And like I said, this is a lot of sauce. For this type of vegetable, a single ingredient sort of stir fry, I don't want a lot of sauce. I want sort of that shimmer and sort of more of a gloss than anything. You don't actually have to use a mixture. I know that we had a question about not doing soy sauce. You could just do a little bit of sweet chili right here at the end. You could also do just a tablespoon of just soy sauce right at the end. It doesn't need to be a complicated, thick, tangy, sweet. You can kind of really make whatever you would like. Got some nice color. Garlic starting to get nice golden brown. And we got some nice wiggle to our celery. So I'm going to turn this down just a little bit. Now, the thing with cornstarch sauces, cornstarch, I'm going to add this just a little bit. Whoop. So probably, I don't know, a tablespoon of that sauce. And it almost instantly gets thick. Cornstarch. Woo. I'm going to turn that off. Cornstarch is used as a thickener, but it only engages, I guess I'm not sure that's not the right term, but it only comes to actual thickening potential once it reaches that 212 degrees or boiling. So if you just have a simmer and you've added like a cornstarch slurry to that, and you're wondering why it hasn't gotten thick, that's because it needs to actually come to a full boil before that thickening actually takes place. All right. And so here we go. This is done very quick. Very light. I love using celery. It's one of those things that doesn't get a lot of credit outside of, I've made chicken noodle soup or something like that. I've lost my rice. Oh, there's my rice. Yes, we will. I'm going to be plating right there as soon as I clean up. So we'll get this out of the way right here. Make sure we're all nice and cleaned up just a little bit. Wipe us down. And this can be used as just a good sort of side snack, or just can be a vegetable on its own. I'm putting some rice in here just to have a little bit of contrast to it. Woo. And see, the sauce is really just meant to be where am I at? Here we go. That's all right. Sauce is really just meant to be really glossy, not super thick, not runny. There's not a lot of sauce here. It's just a nice flavorful coating that you put on these vegetables. So we can just go right in here on the side. A little bit of sesame seeds. And that is going to be 2 stir fries. I would say for the most parts, like I said, you can, the world's kind of your oyster, I guess, for lack of a better term, when it comes to stir fries. Just because it is obviously a traditionally you think of a Asian cuisine when you think of a stir fry. That doesn't mean that this technique has to be sort of pigeonholed to just Asian cuisine. You can try all different sauces and fun things, get creative. You don't even necessarily need a sauce at the end. It's really that technique. I usually put a sauce in just to have that sort of extra goodness to it. You can add just a smidgen of stock right at the end or something like that if you're doing a more, I guess, non-Asian cuisines stir fry. But really, it's a lot of fun to do. You can use a lot of different vegetables and sort of make it your own. I would say, kind of like I said, some tips and tricks. If you have a big piece of broccoli or a large chunk of carrot, I would definitely think about blanching that first, and that is just going to be sort of putting it in some boiling water for about 2 to 3 minutes, scooping it out, and then putting it in a cold ice water bath to sort of shock it and stop that cooking process. They'll be really bright and a little bit tender, but still have a good amount of crunch to them. That way, once you put it in that hot pan and you get all of those oils and all of that sort of flavoring and heat, it will come out just exactly how you want it to, and you won't have any army green vegetables. But like I said, the fridge is kind of your playground when it comes to what you want to put in your stir fry. Just make sure that you're putting things in order as how long they cook. So obviously your broccolis or your carrots, if you haven't blanched them, mushrooms, things like that can really stand up to a bunch of heat, go in first, and then you add in your bell peppers, your scallions, things like that right at the end to make it sort of a complete stir fry. Sauce goes in last just because the sauce gets to where it needs to be very quickly. So you want that to be the last thing that you are doing. And then right onto the plate, because stir fry is not really meant to be something that sits around and rests in the oven while the rest of the meal is getting prepared. So it really should be close to one of the last things you do before you put it on the plate. And I hope that everyone has learned a little bit. How are we looking for time? 47. That's a relatively good thing. I will say, to get some variations on the stir fry, like I said, if you want to do a full meal stir fry, as in you're adding a tofu or a steak or a chicken, that is totally fine. I would usually, the way that I usually do it is I will take the pan, I will cook off usually the tofu or the chicken first to get it about halfway there, take it out, and then you're going to add that in when you add the, let's see, if you want to add it, when you add like the peppers or that sort of stage of vegetable, because you still want your meat to be nice and tender, but you want to make sure that you are cooking it ahead of time, just because of the amount of stirring and everything like that. You don't want to shred or really chop up the meat or tofu or tempeh or jackfruit or any of those proteins that you might be using. So I usually try to do those first, take them out, and then sort of start the stir fry process as well. You do want to make sure that if you are using a chicken or a beef, that they're pretty thinly sliced. Chunks like that take a lot longer to cook. And in this process, you're probably going to end up cooking everything else too long to try and make sure your chicken is done. So you want to make sure that they're nice thin slice. I would say no bigger than pinky width, probably a little bit smaller than that, because it really is meant to be a quick fire cooking process. Noodles, sort of at the same time, if you're doing a noodle stir fry, you'll want to add those right around the same time as you would add the carrot or the mushroom. Not too far past the aromatics, but really right at the end. So actually, let me phrase that as I talked myself out of it. Right where you're adding your bell peppers or your snap peas, sort of right at the end is where you want to do like your cooked noodles. If you're doing, udon noodles or yakisoba or something like that, you want to make sure that it's a little bit towards the end, because you have all that flavor that you're adding the noodles to, and you want to make sure that it has time to absorb along with a time to get hot and nice and cooked.
We had a question.
Yeah. Okay. Good question. I was prepared for this one. I used canola oil, simple canola oil for this one. You do want to use a high smoke point oil. because we are going to be having this thing ripping hot and going. You always want to make sure that your oil isn't burning, whether A, catches a little bit of flame, as we saw, but B, gives you that bitter taste at the end. So I usually stick away from most olive oils. There are some high temp olive oils, but I always like to use olive oil for lower cooking temperatures. Canola oil, vegetable oil, peanut oil is one of the more traditional oils used. Avocado oil does have a very high smoke point. I have mixed feelings on avocado, but that's just a personal thing. Avocado oil can 100% be used in this type of environment. Sesame oil, like I've put into the sauce, I would definitely say is not one of those ones that you want to use. Sesame oil is very potent. It is really, you only need a little bit that'll really give you that sesame flavor. It's not a very high smoke point, but if it does burn, everything is going to taste like burnt sesame, and it's going to sort of overwhelm everything that has happened. So I usually stick with sesame oil to add in at the sauce or right at the end if I want a little bit of that sesame oil flavor.
Thank you, Chuck.
Yeah.
We had another quick question.
Sure.
Rebecca says, I need a better knife. Do you have any knife recommendations that won't break the bank? And someone also did mention Victorinox 8-inch.
All right. I will get to question 2 because I'm sure I'm going to forget it by the time I've answered question 1. Knives kind of go all over the place. Like Wusthof or Hinkle make a good knife. They're not cheap. They're not going to break the bank by any means, but well, it also kind of depends on how big your bank is. You get into like the Shuns and some of the high tiered ones. That's if you're really looking to make this sort of an investment. I'm going to do this a lot. I really want a good knife. If you are going to use it in an, I guess, normal, whatever quote unquote normal sort of means, in sort of a standard way, Wusthof, Hinkles, I've even seen some of like the Cuisinarts like plastic ones that are really being good. It really is on personal preference. I like, this is a Wusthof. This is actually one of the other chef's knife here. It's a very good knife. I think this knife, I believe, is around like $175. So they're not cheap, but this is sort of the really good mid-range of where this is very durable and it'll hold an edge. And that is where you're going to find the difference in quality of a knife. If you go to, I've bought multiple knives from H Mart just because they look awesome. And they're like $20 and they're great, but they don't hold an edge. And that's usually used with the quality of steel that you kind of get. Obviously, if you are paying more, you're going to get a better quality of steel and it'll just last longer. A lot of it, I always recommend going to a Williams Sonoma or a kitchen store, wherever that might be. I'm sure there are some local ones, and really just trying it out. A lot of it has to do with personal feel and personal preference. You'll get a lot of weight disparities and things like that. And so I would say something in the $100 to $150 for a chef's knife. 8-inch is going to be sort of traditional. 8 to 10 inches, I would say, is going to be just about what you might need for any sort of home usage. You have like 12 and 14-inch knives. Those are much more for large production needs. You don't really need them at home. So I would say 8 to 10 inches is going to be fine, completely dependent upon sort of your personal preference and your personal feel. Was that question number 2 as well?
I think it was just somebody recommended Victorinox.
Yep. So Victorinox, however you want to pronounce it. Those can actually be good knives. Like if you only want to spend like $45 on a chef's knives, that'll last you a pretty good amount of time if you take care of it. You might have to sharpen it a little bit more because, like I said, the quality of the steel sort of helps with the lasting of how the edge stays. But as long as you're sort of taking care of it, don't put it in your dishwasher, hand wash it, put it away, have a sleeve so it's not just rattling around in your knife cabinet. Those knives can actually last you a pretty long time, to where if you've gone 2 or 3 years and it might just be time to buy a new knife, spending $40 on the Victorinox or something of that nature is not a bad investment, especially if you are accident prone or like, oh, that fell off, things like that. You never obviously want to catch anything that's falling off a counter that's sharp, but there's a big difference in your stomach clenching when you see the expensive knife falling on the floor as opposed to the not so expensive knife on the floor. So they are very good home knives, especially if you are looking to grow in your knife skills and don't have sort of the professional need to have those sort of knives.
Falling knife has no handle.
Correct. Even though you have to switch your brain off because you want to catch everything because you don't want it to break, just let the knife hit the floor. It's better for everybody.
Last question, by the way. Sure. But Samantha asks, do you have any quick tips for prepping garlic quickly? In case you forever.
Oh yeah, I do. I don't have a whole piece of garlic though. Okay, we're gonna make a weird leap here. So think of this as a whole. This is a piece of baby corn, so we're just gonna have to kind of go with me on this one. There's a whole garlic clove. It still has all of its skin and all of its sheath on it. And what I usually do is I'll take the flat of a knife and I'll just lightly tap it. That stuck with it. But basically, it'll sort of pop a little bit. It'll break the casing, and you can peel that casing off pretty easily. And then you can just sort of smash it down, or you can just, slap it just like that. Obviously, our baby corn isn't exactly doing what it, and you'll end up something like this. And depending upon what recipe you're using, if you don't need a specific like slice or cuts or something like that, you can just start chopping it away. We can do so many things on garlic, even if we had actual garlic and not using baby corn. And then go back and forth just like that. Or if you're looking for garlic paste, I'm going to see if I can actually do this with baby corn. This is so you're going to take your knife, and we've gone from simple tricks to advanced very quickly, so I apologize. But you want to just press it and bring it back. Kind of like that. Kind of like you're painting with it. And it actually kind of works pretty well with for baby corn, and it'll give you pretty much consistently of like a paste that you can do just like that. So if you're not trying to slice or chop, you can really just kind of beat the crap out of it, for lack of a better term, and go from there. Samantha, I know that hopefully that gave you a little bit of a help. Next time we do one of these, I'll be sure to add tricks and tips for garlic usage to the list. Okay.
If you wanted to add eggs to the stir fry, what would when and how?
Okay. So for the most part with egg, so say we're doing, it'll be kind of similar to a fried rice situation because you can make both in a wok. You'll want to, at least the way that I do it, you want to take an egg. Usually you don't need more than 2 eggs. Usually just 1 egg is going to be plenty. I want to scramble them or break them up and whisk them ahead of time so that you are adding right at the end. I would say right around the time that you are I would say after you've added like your peppers and stuff like that, get those sauteing right quick. I always like to put a little circle right in the center so you have about that much space. And then I quickly will scramble them quickly so they're scrambled completely, and then fold in the rest of those vegetables. Because if you add, let's see, if you just as a demonstration, if you had the vegetables right here and you just dumped eggs, all of them, all of that egg would just adhere to the vegetables, and it would cook. It would be just fine, but you couldn't really tell. It would be tiny little fragments of egg, and you couldn't quite tell that you'd added egg to it. So if you're scrambling, or if you want to add scrambled eggs, make sure you've moved your vegetables sort of off to the side. Scramble them pretty quickly right in the center, and then sort of fold in all of those vegetables into the stir fry. That way you have like chunks of egg in it as well. Spoon. So traditionally you have, thought I was getting ahead of myself and being fancy with prepping all the garlic and the ginger. So you'll have, your knot of ginger. You can either use the back of a knife or a spoon to sort of peel, and you can be pretty rough with it too, scraping off all of that skin. And then you have, roughly an inch knot of ginger, excuse me. I usually slice that into a wheel and then bring that down and then keep going from that, as opposed to trying to make fancy cuts out of the giant knot. I'll usually do slices and then continue just chopping those slices down. But I do say a spoon, preferably a metal spoon or a small spoon, something like that, or the back of a paring knife if you are not super comfortable with using the back of your chef's knife to just sort of scrape or peel off that skin. Don't worry about any of those small little knots that you see. For the most part, those are all pretty dried to begin with, and the scraping will allow you to take all of that off anyway. So don't get too caught up on the tiny little nubbin things. Nothing for me. Thank y'all for showing up. It was a real blast. We'll definitely want to do more of these. Love the questions, love the interactions. Hopefully I was helpful and not too confusing. But we can always go from there. Happy to do this. Go dogs. We'll do this again.
Thank you everybody for joining. I hope everybody has a good rest of their Monday. Take care, everybody.